Behave. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Karen Rolirad, retired Lieutenant Colonel. I retired out of 25th Air Force. Do you want to do the intro, or do you want me to just do the intro? I'm not shy. I'm not shy. I was a career weapons officer, ISR weapons officer. Worked a lot with training. Had the opportunity to work with, as everybody probably knows, Mr. Von Highland on several occasions as we've worked together with training. One of the key things that we've done, or that we're looking at, is kind of how do you train the next generation of airmen, right? For those of us that are seasoned, I'll say our training was a lot different than the way that the generations that are coming in today are looking at training. But one of the key things I want to do with this briefing is predominantly get everybody to start thinking, what is our way ahead? What are some of the gaps that we have right now? General Flynn just came out and said that the number of intel individuals that we have, based upon the amount of data that we currently are absorbing, we can't get there from here. And unfortunately, as most of us know, we should have started, about 10 years ago to be able to catch up with today's problem set. So I'm going to kind of break where we started from, how technology has driven us as an intel career field, as an ISR career field, and how that had, an effect on training. And what are some opportunities for us to reach today's generation of airmen? What are some good ideas that have been put, pen to paper? And I will give you an example of that through magic. And then we will discuss kind of like the way ahead. So building our foundation, as I was saying, where do we come from? So we will walk through quite a few of the wars that we've had lately. I picked Desert Storm. Desert Storm was known as the beginning part, as the first technical war. If you can think back, the advent of the first computer, right? We're dealing with the first computer just came online, probably around Desert Storm time, and what impact it had on the intelligence community. We moved into Allied Force as a little bit more of a maturing set and how things that we had to contend with. And then the explosion of technology, right, with OIF and OEF, RPAs flying all over the place, the DGS coming in online, what impact that had, and what our young airmen were thinking as they're sitting in those environments, and how they're trying to learn as fast as they possibly can as data is just pouring in. So I always ask the question to some of the imagery analysts, which white truck is the right white truck? And how do you know that? I mean, all of us have experienced that. If you're sitting there looking at FMV and you're chasing a white truck, why is that the right one? So that is what we needed to contend with during OIF, OEF, and even today. And then we start talking about inherent resolve. And I know I skipped Odyssey Dawn, but I wanted to go into inherent resolve because it's real, it's today. It's a reflection of yesterday in Belgium. It's a reflection of what's going on in Paris. It's a reflection of what's going on in Turkey. It's global, it's network, it's a different way of thinking. It goes back to Desert Storm when we were thinking a little bit more linear. We were looking at the strategic level, the operational level, and the tactical level. And today we can't afford to do that. Today it is more of a network and how that network impacts those three levels. So where we were, and I did not use any of Mr. Von Highland's family photos to make this, but I probably could have. Just kind of bring us back before Desert Storm. Kind of the intel community was really wedded back then, I would say probably between SIGINT and imagery. They were very wedded to what am I hearing and what am I seeing, and please tell me the story. HUMINT may have occurred, but it occurred, in another area and behind closed doors. There wasn't really a lot of connection between the strategic level of intelligence, the national level, and that last tactical mile, where I think most of the people that are seasoned in this audience probably were back at that time. How do I reach into the national level? And if I do reach into the national level, it took about 3 months to get an image. They averaged about 3 months to get an image all the way down after you put in a request. So that was pretty significant. The imagery analysts were dealing with light tables, so they had to have film. Somebody had to go out and fly those missions. They had to actually break down those missions on light tables and then be able to exploit that and then disseminate that. You're talking about a very hands-on time, a very time-consuming tradecraft that we had at that point. We were being taught out of field manuals, out of books. The predominance really at that time was understanding Soviet Union tactics, right? And understanding how to counter those tactics. So that was really where we kind of stepped off from in 1990. And also throw out you can look at some of the equipment that the targeteers were using in their stereographs so that they could get three-dimensional images of what they were going to target, what exactly the buildings looked like, and how high they were. And they were using some rudimentary type stereograph equipment. On the tactical level, you had pilots and intel officers just looking over maps and charts and trying to determine exactly what was the right mission route to go. Unfortunately, the only feedback you got at that time was when the pilot came back and gave you their misrep, you really didn't have a full picture of what was going on in any particular area. And if you had to do BDA was often, based upon what the pilot told you they hit or missed. You try to contend at the tactical level and bring it up to, your higher and say, this is what we got from the misrep. Is there a bigger picture? But usually trying to formulate that bigger picture was very difficult to do because there was no repository for data so that we could all look and see. So I want to talk about how technology really has driven innovation. And I will say Desert Storm, as I stated before, they've touted it to be the first technologically advanced war for us. Why? Well, during Desert Storm, we saw the F-117 start flying. GPS really came online. They started using national tactical means. They started putting a lot of emphasis in some of the tradecraft that we did as intelligence officers, or intelligence airmen, I would say. And one of the key things that I do want to underlay on every single one of these wars is that our basic tradecraft of planning, collecting, processing, analyzing, or exploiting and disseminating has not changed. The only difference that has been made is the speed at which we do it. We still had to use intel cycle, right? Back in day one, as we were dealing with Desert Storm. We still use it through all the wars. It's the speed. And really trying to chase that speed is what the intelligence community has tried to do. And it's what the training community, I would say, is always the end, right? It's the last part of the dog, it's wagging, is trying to catch up to, so that, no kidding, they can put out an individual that is educated and understands how to live in the world and the environment that they're about to get into. And the same was with Desert Storm. But you could see a lot of the skills had not really changed from what I just proposed, but we're still very hands-on. For those of you that actually remember, for the intelligence community itself, we had some of our first computers. They were called Sentinel Byte, especially down at the tactical level, or the combat intel system. They were trying to put these suites together to try to help us communicate. I think they ran on a Unix-based, Unix 1, and we thought at that time that we were going as fast as anybody could possibly go. Didn't realize, what was about to explode. But our efforts were focused there. One of the key things when Desert Storm kicked off, one of the largest air wars that we've had, air superiority was key. It was primarily where we were focused in on. And our primary job there, you can tell, the targeteers spent a lot of time trying to analyze, trying to develop those target packages, and trying to put as much analytical rigor as they possibly could. At the tactical level, you had, intel officers that were dealing with their pilots on a day-to-day basis and using those mission reports to try to pass it back to higher so that we could get a bigger picture of what was going on at the time. There was a chasm between the national and tactical level. There really wasn't this revolution yet that said, guess what, national community? You have a lot of information. You need to make sure we go the last tactical mile, thanks to the individuals like General Hayden, General Clapper, who came in and said, you need to start ensuring that the last tactical mile is taken care of. And for those of you who did not know, Most pilots at the time did not have TSSCI. So we couldn't tell them half the things that we knew if we knew them. So it was very difficult at that point for Intel to be able to have that good relationships with the ops side of the house. So this is what the level of training was. As you look back at the training tail, it was still that very hands-on training. They were teaching them kind of what the rudimentary, I would say, systems that we had. For those of you who don't remember, there was no PowerPoint. You actually had to write out your briefing with vis-a-vis marker and, project it on the wall. And really, that was the best you could do. You would hand draw countries if you needed to, and try to convey to your pilots at the time exactly what you were looking at. And even for the national, if you were flying RJ, same thing. I mean, there was no easy way to learn a language. Guess what? Here's your book, learn your language. You came out of DLI, and here's your opportunity to go fly. So these guys had to learn through repetition, through cause and effect. And that kind of encompassed Desert Storm. So let's fast forward to 1999, okay? So we were talking Allied Force, Noble Anvil, and I put both of them on there. Allied Force being the NATO name, Noble Anvil being the US name. But yet, even though it was a NATO-driven operation, we kind of still had our US enclave. We really were kind of teetering at how do we integrate, between US only and NATO, and how do we contend with some of the security issues, that we deal with today, such as foreign disclosure and working with our partners, which seem to be almost second nature at this point. But back then it wasn't. There was a struggle. And even in Desert Storm, you kind of had that struggle of how you work together. And really, there was a line. You didn't. The US did their thing, and the rest of the world did theirs. The same thing here. Although it was a NATO-driven operation, it was very difficult, for the United States. They were still focused in on exactly what they needed to be doing. So once again, ask the question, who had the big picture? And who was providing that big picture down to the tactical level? Once again, there was this chasm. This national to tactical still was not working. And unfortunately, as good as the intelligence community can be at the strategic level, they're providing information. Unfortunately, it wasn't getting the guys that were actually flying the missions. They had to contend with kind of that tactical operational level of information and hope for the best. And you still had a timing factor. You had a timing factor in the fact that, you were looking for imagery or you were looking something to help at the tactical level. And the unfortunate thing is it still took a long time to get anything out of the community all the way down to the lowest level. And it took a long time to matriculate up as well. So as Intel developed, it started using more systems. We graduated kind of out of Sentinel Byte, and we moved on to Constant Source. For those of you who remember, IMOM system, which really helped plot a lot of things for mission planning. We saw technology was there because guess what? The B2 comes online. So we have F-117 B2 during Kosovo. And the young, I would say, tactical intelligence professionals that are dealing with those squadrons have to deal with some pretty high-tech airframes, but unfortunately the technology wasn't there to help them support. They would have to make that up. They would have to learn. And also within the training field, you were still being taught some of the basics of former Soviet Union tactics, some of the basics that occurred even before 1990. And that evolution really didn't change until we hit the next war. So everybody was pretty much wedded and solid to what they had learned pre-1990. Now, the one good thing that the training environment did say is they started itching toward, you know what? Instead of just talking to individuals, we're going to actually start getting them to role play. And you saw a lot of the training efforts. Let's try to get them together and give them a scenario and let them see if they could do what the Army calls like a rock drill, where you can walk through and anticipate what might happen, good guy versus bad guy, and see what the effect of that is. The relationship between the intelligence side and the operational side still really wasn't there. It wasn't as close You still have your intel officer do your briefing, or help me with mission planning, and then you're done, and the pilots would go fly, and I'll see you again on debrief, and there wasn't that cohesion between intelligence and operations. They were dark days. I would just tell you, it was a dark time. Fast forward, September 11th. It really did change quite a bit, not just only in this country, but I would say it had a tremendous impact on how we, as intelligence professionals, executed, and we executed our tradecraft. What came out of OEF, as I mentioned before, the war was predominantly, there was a change in stature. We got rid of the traditional, I would say, air superiority type war, and we started getting more into this coin type of evolution. Our thought process, as things progressed, moved away from just SIGINT and imagery. We had more capabilities that came online, MASINT capabilities. We had RPAs bringing, at the speed of need, near real time pictures, things that were going on. RPA started at the end of Kosovo, but really did not have their heyday until this kicked off. Then predators were all over the place, and allowing our strategic and operational, even tactical leaders to be able to see exactly where they were emplacing their people, as well as see where the enemy was. So there was a lot more data. You see this whole data explosion start to occur during OEF timeframe, as well as technology starts ramping up. I can take a Predator, or I can take anything that flies, a balloon, and I can stick a sensor package on it. And guess what? That sensor package can provide me whatever I want it to provide me. And it can do it real time. So the data flow has definitely increased. We started investing more in RPAs, right? So you have pretty much Global Hawk shooting pictures, you have the Reaper and the Predators are flying, and then every Army unit, the Army starts developing their own too. So once again, there is a mass flow of information that has come out of this. I will say that our mindset also changed. We were thinking more strategically. I talked to you about, the Soviet Union, former Soviet Union doctrine. Just wasn't working for it. Soft came more predominant during this time, right? They came in with their own thought process. The other thing they came in with was the national community on their shoulder trying to help them. They really brought in that national to tactical integration. And guess what? We all benefited from it. So they saw the need that, no kidding, you can't send somebody out there without the knowledge that they need to be successful. So the national community, and put it up there, really closed that gap. General Hayden came out with his transformation and said, I need to go that last tactical mile because we need this, to ensure the safety of the United States and the men and women that serve the United States. The same thing with General Clapper. They both coined kind of that phrase and tried to push along an understanding that we need to stop the gap between national and tactical. We need to start feeding the warfighter at the lowest level. That in turn developed the relationship between the ISR operator. General Deptula changed that. He said intel was no longer intelligence, intel was operations, and that intel, surveillance, reconnaissance was indivisible, meaning you can't do one without the other two. So he broached the idea and proposed that there was definitely a dependency between the individual that was flying, or the individual that was kicking down doors, and the intelligence person that was standing behind them trying to feed them data or take data from them to feed to higher levels. So you saw a new cycle or a transformation start to grow out of this, where intelligence was not only hitting the lowest levels, but it was also reaching up to the national and vice versa. So I'm not going to tell you it's perfect. I'm not going to tell you it's perfect. And I will also tell you that the 9/11 Commission did help a lot when it said you need to stop stovepiping intelligence. So, but it was kind of a new awakening. So one of the things I want to point out is, we have new technologies. It's definitely grown from just looking at an image on a light table to looking at multispectral images now to being able to understand complex algorithms. This is what we're putting on the young airmen. Before, you just had to look at a picture and say, and I'm not diminishing any type of imagery analyst from the past, but say what it was. But today you may need to look in different frequencies. You may have to understand signals and the parameters and that surround that. There are a lot more complex issues that we're placing on airmen, both at the officer and enlisted side of the house, in order to understand and to be able to analyze. And that's one thing that we will focus in on as we progress through this briefing, is the analytical part. So in the past, we were using a lot of former Soviet Union theory. Today, our world looks a lot more like that spider diagram you see on the bottom of OIF. It changed into that. It was no longer hierarchical or linear. It was something that said, if you take out one arm of the spider, it's going to grow back, or you're going to get another arm that's going to grow in in a different place. Can you anticipate that? Do you know when that's going to happen? And these are the questions that they broach the intelligence community with. So with technology and with our ability to suck in data came a burden of being able to prosecute or to exploit that data in order to meet commanders' objectives and to be predictive. And the predictive part is the part that is very difficult. So today we sit with inherent resolve. And one of the key things, I said I skipped over Odyssey Dawn because I really wanted to get to what was pertinent today. Inherent resolve really is our opportunity to go after Daesh, whether it be in Syria or wherever they're located. But the problem and the difference is that we are not bound by any one nation state at this point. As we look across at terrorism, this global war on terrorism, right, we have attacks that are occurring globally. I got asked the other day, how come we could not predict as an intelligence community those attacks? Why weren't we good enough to be able to do that? And my response was, when you're looking at the ocean, it's very hard to pick out one drop of water that says this is the answer to Paris, because that's how much data we have, have the capability of being able to do. But it does bring up an interesting point, and that is the analytical effort. Where has analysis gone is one of the questions. We've been doing coin for so long. Inherent Resolve brought in not just a coin fight with terrorism, but guess what it also brought in? Everything we learned before in Desert Storm, because we still have to do a kinetic type of fight as well. It's that combination between kinetics and coin that we find the young airmen sitting between, which way do I turn? I have to be knowledgeable not just on kinetics, I have to be knowledgeable on non-kinetics too. Because we haven't even scratched the surface of all the other briefings that are happening around here, and that is cyber. Cyber has jumped into the arena today with the preponderance of cyber attacks that are occurring with non-nation states using cyber terrorism, or terrorists using cyber, and they're using basically the commercial gateway. They're using the World Wide Web to be able to do this. It makes it even harder for us to pinpoint and to analyze where these attacks may occur and what the effect will be. So as we move forward, intelligence definitely had its basis. It was grounded. Today, we're dealing with a networked, near real-time, I will say, operation where we are moving forward and trying to catch the technological tail as they put more and more information and sensors on whatever they can possibly put on to bring in more data. But really, is that a solution, bringing in more data? They used one of the I'll say one of the statistics from NSA was, of all the data that NSA brings in, they said approximately 3% actually got processed. Because of the complexity of many things, you know, language, dialect, the complexity of being able to have the time to be able to sift through all of that. So one of the things that I contend with is how do we meet the challenges of today? How do we meet the challenges of tomorrow? We know that we definitely have a lot of, I would say, some of our specialty has atrophied, right? We have analytical issues that everybody has acknowledged, but they're analytical issues only because we have more data and how we sift through all of that data to find that one drop of water. Addition to that, we also have targeting issues because now we have kinetic and non-kinetic targeting that we have to contend with. My belief is non-kinetic targeting is targeting, center of analysis or center of gravity analysis. That's all it is. However, what is different, it's the domain. And how well does the intelligence community understand the digital domain or the cyber domain? We're not bred that way. Should we be? If that is one of the other domains that we have to deal with, it's a question. And then we have advancement in technology that we're even using within the DGS. The DGS currently is trying to keep up as rapidly as they possibly can to exploit the data that they're getting. But unfortunately, it is an archaic system too, even though they're trying to upgrade it. They're trying to move at the neatest speed. So the key thing that as we walk off and look at inherent resolve is, what does the training tail look like to deal with a very dynamic environment? Now I looked at this briefing more as posing questions instead of providing solutions. Because I knew in this environment there's a lot of individuals that have their fingers in the pot, have a better understanding of how we grow that. You have a young airman whose problem set is they need to be globally smart, they need to understand multiple domains, and they need to do it in a way that resounds with them. Today's generation doesn't want to be handed a book. You know, the hands-on piece as far as looking, you know, in detail, not so much. So we must contend, and how do you reach that? Because the problem set that I have provided you and the technology that has grown from Desert Storm to today is real. So how do you get them to embrace this? So in working in collaboration with 25th Air Force, they have a solution, a proposed solution on how they can reach today's generation of airmen and how they could teach them. Now, this is just a first step. Merely a first step. But the more people who start thinking about this and the more people who understand the gravity of the situation, I think the steps will come a lot faster. It took a while to even get to this level. So I'm going to play this video for you so you understand. And I think for those of you who attended General Lambert's briefing, he also addressed this. It's called magic. And it's about 5 minutes long, but I think it gives you a good understanding of where one niche is going in order to address this issue.
Hello, my name is Master Sergeant Justin
everybody
Jackson,
hear?
and I am assigned to 25th Air Force as the Superintendent of Technology Integration and Application Development, serving more than 12,000 intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance professionals in the 25th Air Force, including officers, enlisted, civilian, and total force airmen. What does this mean? It means that I'm in charge of creating magic. MAGIC stands for Mobile Applications and Games for Intelligent Courseware. 25th Air Force, in partnership with Air Education and Training Command, developed MAGIC to revolutionize the way that we do training. MAGIC was born from the idea that we live in a mobile world and are not tied to any one device. Because of this, we wanted to be able to do training when and wherever and on a device of our choosing. But we didn't want it to feel like training. After looking at the peer-reviewed research on adult learning methodologies, we set out to build a library of applications and games designed for the most current technology to make the learning process more fun and engaging for all ages. What we are demonstrating today is just a sample of what we have accomplished and how far we have to go. We have much more magic in development ahead to meet our goal of revolutionizing analysis and delivering the best training that we can to our airmen. Now that you know what we're doing, I'd like to show you a little magic. Over the next few minutes, I will demonstrate how we have brought learning into the digital age. Our first video was designed to familiarize our airborne ISR professionals with the aircraft that they may fly on. These applications allow our airmen to become acquainted with U.S. and foreign aircraft. Every button in the application either provides information or allows the airman to manipulate the aircraft's position. Each application has a built-in knowledge check to reinforce the information to the individual. This next series of applications demonstrates a variety of communication technologies. We provide a visual representation of complex classroom theory, making it more accessible and allowing the user to change variables in the scenario, leading them to grasp the theories faster. Touching the information button makes more information available at the user's fingertips. Many of our applications have been translated so that the concept can be learned in English and then practiced in the analyst's language specialty. This application shows how a cellular phone connects through different towers to stay connected while on the network. This application provides users with an understanding of how an analog signal is converted to digital and back again. 25th Air Force has been charged with revolutionizing and developing culture of analysis for all ISR professionals, and critical thinking is the foundation of analysis. These next few applications take the lessons in critical thinking from 2,000 years ago, starting with Plato's allegory of the cave, and showing how these concepts are still applicable in today's environment. The use of critical thinking in the decision-making processes of every airman has a direct impact on overall mission accomplishment. We have taken this concept of critical thinking and developed a game that represents a day in the life of a deployed ISR professional. To successfully complete the mission, the correct decisions must be made using critical thinking skills. Quantum Intelligence Neural Network, or QUIN, is one of our more advanced games and allows users to fly a drone inside of QUIN's mind to reprogram her. This excerpt from the game deals with identifying different types of bias. Not only do we use the most current technology, but we looked to more traditional forms of entertainment and have developed our own board game that is a fun, social way to practice critical thinking. 25th Air Force has also partnered with the United States Air Force Academy to convert their Military Strategic Studies 200 course into an ebook format, shaping the way Air Force leaders train. In an effort to familiarize personnel with the operations of Distributed Common Ground Systems, also known as the DCGS, we developed a simulation that recreates the look and feel of a DCGS operations floor. Another of our academic partnerships is with Trinity University in San Antonio, Texas. Computer science majors developed the games that you are seeing now to sharpen critical and cyber thinking skills. The magic show that you have witnessed today has allowed 25th Air Force to revolutionize the way that we train. Magic provides us the ability to train in a digital world and the real world. All Magic applications were developed to be platform agnostic and will be shared with any government, DoD, or academic institution. This model lowers the overall cost for the taxpayer while still providing the highest quality training. Today's airmen are the most intelligent that we have ever recruited, and they are our greatest resource. Therefore, they must be able to train smarter, faster, and better than ever before. Aim high, fly, fight, win.
So magic is only just one way, as I said, one slice of how we go about training. What are some other ways that have come online as well? Virtual classrooms are being used now. They're trying to infuse more virtual classrooms, as well as using avatars to reach today's generation, to get them to understand the complex problems that I've laid out with technology that we have today, so that they can understand it in ways that they're used to. There isn't an individual that walks down the road, probably under the age of 18, that doesn't have an iPad and a cell phone, and maybe more than one, you know. That is their conduit to the world. That is how they express themselves, and that's how they understand. Using virtual classrooms is one of the ways, with magic, you know, meaning that is accessible to this generation. In addition to that, we're even looking through the operational community. They're trying to find, you know, using virtual training themselves so that they can have these realistic environments, contested environments, where they're actually bringing people together, even though they're not located in the same place. They are located and brought together digitally. So you can fly a mission, you can be an ABMer, you can actually do control the mission, you could be the intel person, you know, typing it, and you do not have to be in the same place. Live, virtual, and constructive. And it's the way that we're trying to move and progress through virtual flag. The other thing is red flags are becoming a lot more inclusive. They understand that we need to start prosecuting things in a way that we bring everybody who would be part of a war package together, and we need to be able to train that. Instead of just for flyers, it now encompasses pretty much every AFSC, so that they can come together and they can do those rock drills that I was telling you about, but they're actually sitting down and have the opportunity to do that in a red flag where they can do live fly, and they can actually debrief and learn. And that also includes cyber. So as time is progressing, we're seeing that, you know, new technologies are on the verge. We're seeing an explosion, as I said before, in unmanned aircraft. Now that, you know, they're bringing out the RQ-170, you know, that is flying. In addition, you have F-22 and F-35. And I've heard the F-22 and the F-35 being called probably the greatest ISR platform, and I hate to say that out loud, but the greatest ISR platform because the level of sensors that it has on it will multiply the amount of data that could be brought to bear, not only for the pilots, but for the intelligence in the ISR community. So as you can see, that bridge has been crossed. Intelligence and operations are closely netted today, and even the platforms that we are developing serve both purposes. But once again, you start throwing even more and more data into the world. So what are some future considerations as I walk up the stage? Just things to consider. There is a rapid need to develop new skills for the next generation in a way that's applicable to them. There is a rapid need also to deal with technology, whether it be using automation, whether it be using a computer in order to sift through terabytes of data. At this point, it's probable that a computer could probably spit out an answer to you, but it always seems to be that there needs to be a man in the loop at this point, because I will use language, for instance. A change in dialect can change the meaning of everything, right? One word can mean multiple things, so you'll have to have that man in the loop that kind of understands. So there's still a wedded process there with a human kind of in the loop. Getting away from that, as I think computer systems mature and as technology matures, ultimately the hope would be that they would be able to produce and be able to use the rigor that that man in the loop would provide. The redevelopment of atrophied skill sets. We talked about analysis in multiple domains. We talk about multi-infusion right now, but it's even more than that, because people aren't really thinking about the application of the digital world and how that's coming to bear. As I stated, we probably needed to start building those analysts about 10 years ago. Unfortunately, right now, we're still contending with trying to develop those analysts. And also targeteers that can deal with the kinetic and non-kinetic world. How do you do that? They're slowly making that progress, but once again, we're lagging the fight. We need tools for multi-generation workforce. I'll tell you, that's probably the hardest thing to contend with, both on the civilian side, I would say, and the military side. There's at least 5 generations in the workforce right now. There are some individuals that are used to pen and paper, and that's all they want. And there are some individuals that can't move without their iPad. You know, we need to understand that and bring them together. So, because I think that there's benefit from both sides of the house. There are still a lot of individuals that come from doing things the old way, and you can learn a lot from that. And maybe that can be infused in maybe some of the new, graphics that they have or new capabilities such as magic. And the last thing that I think that we need to really contend with, because technology is moving as fast as it is and will continue to move quickly, as cyber starts taking up, it's already gaining traction. I would say 5 years ago, we were whispering cyber. Today, we're talking about it in the open, and we're talking about AFSCs and career fields that are dealing with this challenge. So if cyber is operations in the cyber domain, there needs to be an intelligence tail that goes with it. And that intelligence, they need to start working together. And that right there is definitely something that I lay on all of you. How do we get there? And how do we contend with these issues that I brought to bear? So in conclusion, I think we've made a lot of headway. I mean, from Desert Storm to where we are today, I mean, a technological advancement, it has been an explosion. I can only assess what is going to happen in the next 26 years and how fast we're going to be moving at that point and where we're going to be putting our emphasis. But I think it's something that we need to start contending with today and understanding and building tools so that individuals know how to prosecute those type of wars, the war in the next 25 years, as opposed to the war we were fighting 5 years ago. So this concludes my briefing. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. If I just stunned you, that's fine too. Yes, sir.
I think part of the challenge is
I was going to get
part of the challenge. Part of the challenge.
All right. Is while the technology has advanced and will continue to advance, policy hadn't kept up. And I've always been concerned. I've been in DCGSs and these young lieutenant and airmen that are looking at a screen for 8 to 10 hours and all they're getting is video. When the technology there is to overlay SIGINT, to overlay all kinds of human, to at a decision, for example, where disturbed earth is seen and you see a cell phone emission, you jam it. And yet that decision has to be made at Fort Meade, which is insane. I mean, those are the kinds of things that I think will drive the youngsters out. It's not the training. I mean, the advancing in training and the modernization of training, as you described, is right on. I mean, clearly that has to be done for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is capturing interest, but it's a better delivery platform. It's a more efficient delivery platform. And then keeping that training modernized and interesting and all the same thing. But yet, when they come out of training, if they go into a DCGS and they sit there and you can't have SIGINT, you can't have this, you're an imagery guy or gal, you're over here, you can't talk to the SIGINT folks. That we got to overcome that because the youngsters will just go out because in the other communities it's not that way.
Yes, sir. I think that's testimony to the fact that you have young officers here. It's really going to be incumbent upon them as they're coming up. They need to be beating the drum on, making these changes at the policy level. And that's why I'm glad you guys are here.
Any other questions?
Absolutely.
Karen, I've got one for you. Big data and man in the loop versus man on the loop. The training aspect is obviously key to getting our intelligence analysts up to speed and keeping them up to speed. However, big data kicks our butt every day. You mentioned NSA only does 3%. So how do we get to, not how do we get there? How do we overcome the resistance that there has to be a man in the loop at the data level versus a man on the loop at the information level? It's my opinion that if we don't get to automated systems that go from raw data to information so that the analyst can be an analyst, not a data miner and a data integrator, that we can never get through all the data that we're collecting. So what is the, how do we get past my question is, how do we get past the resistance that we have to have an analyst in the loop at the data level as opposed to looking at the information that's being collated together by some of the intelligent systems that we can build if we choose to do so?
I think it comes down to assumed risk and what the commanders are willing to assume as risk. I think we have the capability of being able to do it right now. Absolutely. And I think we all are. You can use ontologies. You can use whatever you need to do to filter out data. It comes out to proving itself, just like any capability that we have developed, proving itself to be useful. And then at what point on the line does a man actually get that data and take it for face value, or and say, the computer spit this out and this is what the answer is? I think if the data proves fruitful and it is something that could be used, you're developing that relationship and you're developing that level of trust. But I think at the very beginning, it is a fear of risk, taking that risk, and relying just solely on this computer system to spit out the answer. So it's also an education piece too. I think getting the commanders to understand what the computer system can do and what its limitations are, that needs to be articulated as well.
So you think commanders in general can be concerned or worried about letting a machine collate the data to information as opposed to a trusted airman who has proven himself or herself day in and day out to be reliable in doing that?
I think at this point, this is my opinion, at this point, yes.
Again, I go back to the policy. It's this notion that and SIGINT is the classic example, less so today, but where we're going to hold it because I don't know what you're going to do with it. And I'm afraid, means and methods and sources and all the other things where when we got really, particularly with soldiers and Marines on the ground getting blown up, a lot of those policies got overturned. And the SIGINT unfiltered went forward and was deciphered forward. And there are other, HUMINT as well and other things as well. It's the policy has to be driven, and it's driven. Now the same commanders help drive that policy at the senior level, and that's what Petraeus did on SIGINT. And then Hayden and Clapper were leaning forward to help. But it's generally driven. The old X-Files saying the truth is out there. It is. And so if I'm looking again at whether it's geospatially linked, there's not a single HUMINT report, and be able to link them, that young, at the tactical edge, that young lieutenant or staff sergeant, senior airman, ought to be able to do that. And right now they can't. I mean, they can in terms of capability, but the technology's there. Just look at Amazon. I mean, Amazon knows you and how you buy once you buy about 3 or 4 things. The same thing, it's out there. The data, the ability to correlate data and link data, connect dots, exists technology-wise. It's the policy. The counter-ID fight, the counter-ID center drove a lot of that and got approval to dig into databases because the data's there. Only 3% of it's been processed, but it's all in the box. And so how do you,
bring that
in a reasonable way, and then it becomes machine to machine, where somebody's not having to pull that manually. It's just somebody else who looked at this particular terrain was interested in this. And it was a conversation that occurred 3 days ago over a cell phone or a HUMINT report or a interview social network kind of thing.
So my question would be then, how do we overcome that risk? It's a risk factor, whatever level you want to say. Commander being big C, as big as you can get, the policymakers, it's the risk factor. Are you going to be able to accept this data as being true, and what happens when it's not?
Excuse me.
We have 5 generations in our military right now. And so back in our day, BAM, when we were looking at targets and we said we had SIGINT confirmed or cyber, we are a cyber target, it's gone. But you had old school saying, I need to see a picture of a smoking hole. So there's this process of evolution in moving from the pen and pencil guy that needed to see a smoking hole versus the guy that's always looking on his iPad, understands the essence of the cyber world and the cyber domain. He's going to be a heck of a lot more comfortable in that risk assessment than us old ones who said, I need to see the whole. I mean, yeah, you say, but I'm old school. So as we move the evolution and the generations through the pipeline and through the process, once we get there, just like we are with cyber, now that cyber's become more and more a part of our generation, there are more and more people accepting what cyber can and cannot do, how we're going to use it, the fact we're contested all the time. So I think that will be part of the process solution, is once we start moving out and you get the newer generation in the leadership positions, the risk mitigation and the risk assessments will be different.
I agree. What do you two think? Lieutenant Davis, calling on you. If a computer gives you an answer today, oh, sorry? Yeah. There you go.
Well, I was prior enlisted, so I've been for a little while, but I'd say bring it on. Like, I've worked with NSA, and as far as that 3%, I'd love to see software that can correlate and put together that positive picture that you can act on, but some of that is there. There's still some way to go in that process of software development.
What do you think, Major?
No, I agree. Big data is a big thing. It's been out there for a few years now, and I think from an operational standpoint, if you're able to have something that kind of streamlines everything and is able to kind of help with finding those trends, it'll definitely save a lot of time and possibly lives when you're trying to make that call on to whether to go in with it and continue with the operation, or maybe call it off. But if you have that data backing you up, that's going to help a lot versus maybe having an airman. And mind you, they're well trained and they can certainly make that analysis, no problem. But if it's going to save a lot of time, to have that big data backing up that, all source data or whatnot, cross queuing, putting everything together, SIGINT, and whatnot, that would really be very beneficial.
I think the other issue that we have, sir, you talk about policy, but I think even at the lower level, how we train. We really haven't talked about, and I wish we had some senior NCOs here, about the whole process of the UNTW and how we radicalize our training process. Because right now, we still are using the same process that we've had for years. And it's not fast enough to keep up with today and current enough, especially on the intel side, not knowing how the cyber guys are doing theirs. They may be doing theirs a lot quicker, but it's a process of bringing everybody together and having that level of consensus and what you're going to actually teach people, and then teaching that. And unfortunately, when a young airman steps out the door, they're not necessarily equipped with everything that they need because the world has passed them by. So that is another thing I think we need to contend with too. Does anybody else have any questions or?
Thanks, everybody. I didn't get a chance to brag on Karen ahead of time because she jumped right out here and didn't get to do introduction. But she's been a outstanding contributor to the intelligence community for 22 years of her career. She was commander at the training squadron at Goodfellow, and did a lot of amazing stuff in her career, starting with graduation from the Air Force Academy. And she's still contributing as a civilian now, the Deputy Director of Military Affairs for San Antonio. And we appreciate you coming out today and doing this for us. On behalf of General Shea and FC International, I'd like to give you a coin.
All right.
Thank you for your outstanding presentation.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate it.
We appreciate you. Thank you.